Welcome back. In this section we will continue working on the eye socket. Select the PolyDraw tool and let's add a loop around the existing eye socket loop. This second loop will allow us to better define the shapes around the eye socket. Note that if the mirrored cut gets in the way while making your cut, rotating or changing the view can help. When done, right-click to exit the tool. With more geometry added, we can now push and pull the vertices to add volume to the eye ridge and fix the transition from the eye socket into the skull. Like this area in the front here, which needs to be pulled in so it doesn't obstruct the eye. Notice here how helpful positioning of the view allows for vertex changes to be quickly and easily made. This is one of the main advantages to the widget approach to modeling in a real-time solid view. Continue on pulling out the vertices of the eye ridge. In general, this second loop should be about even or out slightly more than the inner loop, and both loops should have a consistent flow to their curve. Now that we've worked our way around towards the back of the eye, let's pull the skull area behind the eye socket out some to give it more volume and to line it up better with the outer part of the eye ridge. With the skull shape improved, let's continue our tweaking the rest of the way around to the front of the eye. With the two loops basically the way we want them, reactivate the PolyDraw tool and starting here in the corner of the eye, let's cut a loop around to the front. While we're at it, let's also continue these two unfinished loops around to the top of the head. I'm also taking a moment here to adjust these vertices above the eye to better fit the flow of the mesh. Next, let's bring the eyelid geometry flush to the eye. First, we need to combine the two faces inside the eye socket into a single face. Change the element type to faces. Select the two interior faces for the eye socket, then find and use the Merge Polygons tool to make the selection into a single face. Now we can use the Bevel tool to add a new edge loop inside our eye socket. Make sure Quad Mode is checked in the Options panel before clicking to make the new loop. With the geometry added, the next step is to move it into position. Click on the Pick and Paint selected icon and set the element type back to vertices. Move each of the newly created interior vertices so that they tuck up against the shape of the eyeball. This will take some work, but try and get it as close as you can. I'm focusing a fair bit of work here on the corner of the eye. This is a bit trickier than the other parts, but it's important to get this part right if the eye shape is to be believable. With the inner part of the corner in place, I can see that the placement of the nearby two sets of vertices on the outer two loops could be better. For efficiency, I can click-drag over the vertex pairs so that I can move them together. With that difficult part out of the way, let's continue on working the rest of the loop snugly up against the eyeball. Here we can really see the benefit of using the stand-in object. There really would be no way to accurately model this kind of detail from a 2D drawing. While adjusting these vertices, it's important that you use multiple views. Just because the vertex position looks right from one direction, you may find after rotating the view that more adjustment is required. With the lower left part of the inner loop, I'm pulling it down tighter to line up better with the next outer loop, but also slightly below that so that it gives the impression of the bottom lid tucking up under the eye. That's pretty much it for adjusting the inner loop, but adding that geometry has given us some better visual cues for tweaking the two outer loops. So let's fix up some of the remaining problem areas. This area in the back is a bit too flat, so let's pull it out a little bit. This area here needs tightening up some. The upper eyelid is sticking out a bit far as well. It also needs to be thicker vertically. And the area behind the eye socket still needs to be pulled out some more. Looking around, we can see there's a spot in the front that needs to be pulled in tighter towards the eyeball. That's looking pretty good. Let's move on to finishing up the interior of the eye socket. Switch the element type back to faces and select the face inside the eye socket using the mirrored side. Select the normal sweep tool from the tool's flyout and then sweep the face in some. Right-click drag on the widget to uniform scale down the new face. Next, click on the delete icon to delete the newly created interior face. This will leave a hole which will help the eye socket to maintain its shape when we add the subdivision surface layers, which we'll get into in the next section. Click Pick and Paint selected and change the element type to Vertex, so that we can select a point to rotate the view around and zoom out to see the results of all that hard work. In the next section, we will further detail the head and introduce subdivision surfaces.